is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask, with your host, Dr. Judith Briles. On the show today, you'll find out where book publishing is going and how to take advantage of it. How to identify and avoid publishing predators. What opportunities are emerging as the book trade evolves in new forms. How to avoid losing money, and much, much more. Join us now as a variety of publishing pros will deliver insights and strategies to take the author to the next level of publishing. It's your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. Brought to you by AuthorU and the Book Shepherd. And now, here's your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
Hi, it's another edition of AuthorU, your guide to book publishing. I'm Dr. Judith Briles, known as the Book Shepherd, and today is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because I've enjoyed having my books not only in the United States but in 16 different countries. And with me is one of the agents who I've worked closely with, Bob Erdmann, who is President, CEO of Columbine Communications and Publications. And what Bob is all about is foreign rights, getting your book, whether it's in Poland, Germany, Russia, China, Korea, India, Malaysia, Latin America, Brazil, South America, you name it, that's where his contacts are. So if you want to get your book into other places outside of the United States, Bob Erdmann is one of those people who can make it possible. Let's really talk about what's going on. I think one of the most important things, Bob, is really define what are foreign rights for authors today.
Well, the simple definition is you're allowing someone in a foreign country to publish your book, either in a translated version of the book, if it's a foreign language, or in certain other countries, English-speaking countries, to do what we call a reprint of the book, an English reprint. Countries like Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom, India, Singapore, and so on would they speak English, so they'd be doing an English reprint. But in either case, what you're doing is granting that foreign publisher a legal license to publish your book in their country under their copyright, under certain terms and conditions. The terms and conditions would be the compensation, of course, in the form of a royalty advance and royalty payments in the future, specific territories that they're dealing in. Again, if it's let's say as an example, if it's a Spanish language country, Spanish is spoken in many countries around the world. So if it's a publisher in Spain and they want world rights, are you granting them are you granting them rights for the Spanish language in Spain alone, or are you also including Central and South America? Or are you including the U.S. and so on? So the contract they're doing, the license to publish, is a very specific contract telling them that they can publish your book in their country in whatever language that you're agreeing to for a specific period of time and within a specific territory.
So if I hear you correctly, that let's say you sold the book to Spain and it says Spanish rights, that if it's not really defined exclusively to Spain proper, that it could end up in any other Spanish-speaking country. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
That's true. That's okay. True. Again, let's take that Spanish publisher as an example. If it's a publisher in Barcelona and they want world rights, that would include, of course, Latin America, Central South America, perhaps the U.S., and what you want to find out, of course, is what are their distribution arrangements in those countries? Do they really have something that's solid in terms of distributing your book in South America as well? And if not, certainly you don't want to grant Spanish rights because Spanish rights around the world, because there are other publishers in those countries who probably can do as good or better than that publisher was. So you want to be very, very specific in what you're doing. Obviously, a publisher, just like American publishers, if your name is Random House, you want everything. And if your name is a Spanish publisher in Barcelona, you want everything. But that's part of the negotiating process to go through. If they do want world rights and they prove to you that they are able to sell and market your book on a worldwide basis, well, that of course has more value than just Spain. So you can expect a little bit more compensation for something like that.
Well, I do want to get into compensation, and we can kind of build up to that, because one of the challenges, most of us, that's why I was so surprised to get the email from you 2 weeks ago on the 4th of July saying that Saudi Arabia wanted to renew our publishing rights. Which actually tickles my fancy, thinking that they're doing a book called The Confidence Factor written by a U.S. broad in Saudi Arabia.
That is funny.
Yes, it is. And I have to say that I was delightfully surprised with it, because the other thing is most of us really believe that once you sell them, you're never going to hear again. It doesn't matter how many copies you sell.
Yeah.
So
that's another issue that perhaps we can talk about now.
Okay.
So often I hear an author say, or conventional wisdom among authors who perhaps don't have as much experience in foreign rights as they think they do, they'll say, well, gee, I heard so-and-so sold their book to a Bulgarian publisher, and after I got the advance, I never got never heard from him again. Well, take into consideration that what we do when we license a book is part of the negotiation is we get the entire royalty from their first printing as the advance. So if they print X number of copies of 5,000 copies of the book, and we've already secured all the royalty for those 5,000 copies in advance, and the book doesn't sell any beyond that, they're not going to go into a reprint and print more books, just like an American publisher is not. If the book, if they printed 5,000 copies and they only sold 3,000, and the contract is about to terminate, heck, they don't want to print anymore. Of course not. So that's a reason, a very common reason why many times you don't hear any more from them, because there is no more royalty coming due. On the other hand, I had a situation a few years ago with an author that. A New York Times best-selling author that said, "Gee, I think I sold my book via another." Let me backtrack. He sold his book through the New York publishing house a number of years ago, and he thought it was selling pretty well, but he had never heard anything. So he asked me if there's anything I could do. So I got in touch with the agent in Japan, and who sold the book. And I said, "Is there anything going on?" And the agent said, "Well, let me check on it." So they checked with the publisher, and they said, "Oh yeah, by the way, yeah, it is selling well, and also we owe you some money." And I think it was several $1,000s in royalty that he had coming. So in that case, whose fault was that? That was probably the New York publisher's fault for not following up on it to find out. So just like here in America, if Barnes & Noble owes you some money and it's about 30 or 40 days past the due date, the onus is on you to call them and say, "Hey, where's my check?" So there's a number of sides to the stories when you hear they never heard again. Maybe, as I said, maybe the book just simply didn't sell as well, or maybe it might just take a little tickler to find out what's going on. And people within organizations change, and what's true in the publishing business is many times there are mergers and acquisitions that go on, and things tend to slip through the cracks. So. Two things: if maybe it didn't sell as well, or maybe it just needs some follow-up by somebody.
Well, and then sometimes, as you know, Bob, they don't respond either. I mean, we've had those situations too.
Yeah.
With some people, for different reasons. So, all right. So if you have. Let's say we've got it, and we've got someone who is interested. What's the process to go through? And does it make sense for someone? I know I have a friend who's handled all his foreign rights sales. Does it make sense for them to do a DIY and reach out, or does it make sense to go ahead and affiliate with someone like yourself? And I'll logically say, "Oh yes, come to me." I get that, but there's some people that do like to do this stuff yourself. What are the odds of them getting top dollar, or knowing what avenue to go down, or what to avoid?
Well, God, that's a loaded question. There's so many variables to that question. And let me just use an example, answer it by using an example. If In fact, I was just talking to, coincidentally, an author in Colorado a couple of hours ago who I think she self-published a book, and coincidentally, a publisher from Poland got in touch with her, and so she had sold the Polish rights to the book. Mm-hmm. And for various reasons, she felt that Japan would be a wonderful market for this book, and felt that let's see what we can do by going to Japan. Well, Japan is a unique market in that most, in fact, all Japanese publishers prefer to deal through a Japanese agency, and there are 2 or 3 very, very good Japanese agencies to deal with. So one approach on something like that would be to get in touch with a foreign rights agency, a literary agency in that foreign country that you want to take a rifle shot at, like in this particular case, Japan, or maybe there are other countries. So take a rifle shot at that agency, at 2 or 3 agencies in that country, find out what their submission process is. Everybody has a website, so go to their website and find out what the submission process is for a book that you would like them to consider to handle to represent your best interests. And the process then, as would be with any foreign rights thing, is they probably want to take a look at the book, which in today's field would require sending a PDF.
So hold that. Bob, hold that thought. We're going to come right back on the whole submission process of how to do it yourself. All right, this is Judith Briles. My guest is Bob Erdmann. We're talking foreign rights on AuthorU, your guide to book publishing.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these.
Many of us have dreamed of writing a book.
Some of us even have.
Then the hard work starts.
You'll need an editor.
Who will design the cover or typeset the pages?
Who will format the ebook?
If you're a business owner, consultant, or coach with a serious message and expertise to share, the team of experts at 1106 Design can guide you through the maze.
They've helped more than 1,000 authors create top-quality books and avoid the not-so-reputable self-publishing companies.
Learn more at 1106design.com.
Then call Michelle at 602-866-3226. 1106 Design.
Is there a book in you or another? AuthorU will show you how to create, develop, and publish your book without being hoodwinked. If you already have a book out, you'll find a supportive and brainstorming community that's connected and creative no matter where you live. AuthorU brings in national experts for its book camps and annual author extravaganza held each May. It has regular meetings and delivers webinars for its members on timely topics. Through AuthorU's extensive network, members enjoy exclusive benefits, including significant discounts for a variety of services necessary to publishing. The Resource, its online book publishing news magazine, is content-heavy and it's free. If you want to create a book that has pizzazz, punch, and panache, AuthorU is for you. If you're a hobbyist or a casual author, it's not. Join AuthorU today through its website at AuthorU.org. Follow AuthorU on Twitter at AuthorU and on Facebook at AuthorU, where timely author and publishing tips and articles are posted daily. AuthorU, where the author goes to become seriously successful.
This is the TogiNet Radio Network, radio with a cutting edge.
First impressions are everything in the world of book publishing. Whether your book is an ebook, a print version, or both, your book cover needs to pop, sizzle, and sparkle to immediately capture the attention of your audience. And your book's interior needs to be just as dynamic and reflect the professionalism your readers demand. Nick Sellinger of NZ Graphics has won numerous national and international book awards for his cover designs and interior layouts. With over 20 years of experience in graphic design, he knows what it takes to create award-winning books and the many promotional pieces that authors need, such as posters, banners, postcards, one-sheets, business cards, logos, and more. Visit ncgraphics.com and see what authors and publishers have to say about their award-winning books and how NZ Graphics can make your book the success it was meant to be. That's nzgraphics.com.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. If you want to write and publish a book, if you want to be successful as an author, your guide to book publishing, everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask, is for you. Stay tuned and you'll hear about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
All right, so we were talking about the submission process with Bob Erdmann, who is the president and CEO of Columbine Communications and Publications, and they specialize in foreign rights for authors. And just to full disclosure, Bob has represented several of my books and actually have gotten them into 16 different countries over the years. And so, I know he knows what he's talking about. So you get to learn what we're talking about because the world has changed a lot. And we're talking about, as we went to the break, submission guidelines for the DIYers. If you're going to do it yourself, what do you need to do? So, Bob, you were talking about going to agencies in respective countries and looking on their websites and seeing what the guidelines were about. Was that correct?
That's right. And we kind of left off with 9 times out of 10 what they will ask for is to have a review copy of the book, either in the form of a hard copy or a PDF. We were talking about the wisdom of sending PDFs around the country, and is it secure or not to do that? And my answer to that is that it certainly it's secure if you're dealing with a reputable agent or if you're dealing with reputable publishers around the world. And if you're going into a foreign country cold, probably the best way to go about it would be through a good agent in that particular country. I used Japan as an example because Japan, publishers in Japan are, I don't know if they're obligated or not, but basically 100% of the time they prefer working through a Japanese agent for whatever the reasons, to keep a certain portion of the commission within the country. The language barrier, it just, to them, makes more sense. And other countries the same way, Korea, China, some of the European countries, and so on. So the process would be to find out if you're targeting a shot at a particular country or countries, to find out who the top agencies are in those countries, go on their website, find the submission process, and the submission process is basically send us a copy of the book, a PDF copy of the book, and any supportive reading material about the book in the form of reviews or they love to know the U.S. sales. If your book has sold a bunch of copies here in the U.S., believe me, that gets more attention than anything. I know when I would be at the Frankfurt Book Fair, one of the first questions I'd be asked by Japanese publishers is, "What are your best sellers? What are the, what are the ones that have sold the best? That's the ones you're interested in." Mm-hmm. And I remember a number of years ago, I was fortunate enough to represent a book that had at that time just hit the New York Times bestseller, coincidentally with the Frankfurt Book Fair. And I had publishers from all over the world just almost beating my door down to get their hands on the book. So those kinds of things are important. Authors and publishers here in the States always ask me, what can we do to get more action or more interest in among foreign publishers or agencies for the book? And the answer to that is make sure it's a huge success here in the U.S. Get reviews from good sources, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Denver Post, Chicago Tribune, places like that, Publishers Weekly. Get good distribution here. Get a lot of copies sold. When you're talking of 50,000, 500,000, a million copies sold, that catches a lot of attention. And that's the best thing you can possibly do. So that's the kind of information that they want to have when they're considering a book. I hate to say it, but probably in many cases, content is second. So
I get that, but you make me smile when I understand the average New York published book sells 5,000 copies, period. it's not all the bestsellers. And you know, when our audience is not selling, very few anyway, 1 million copies of a book to push out, but they can get publicity, and it's really difficult to get New York Times and those kind of reviews. But let me ask you this, because a lot of authors do get forward reviews, has a huge reputation in the independent book publishing, certainly among libraries. A review in forwards is gold, the gold standard in a lot of ways. And Publishers Weekly certainly is lovely to have, but those are few and far between, and they do have their paid reviews from the Select, and they have Forward has Clarion, and Kirkus has those. Do foreign countries care whether it's from Forward's Clarion or Publishers Select, or do they just pay attention to Forwards and Pub Weekly?
I think again, depends an awful lot on the publisher, the country. I used Japan as an example before because Japan is very interested in the highlights, the big names, the big sellers, the best sellers, the New York Times, and those kinds of things. Those are the things they like to look at. That's it. When you're into some other countries around the world, let's say some of the European countries, they're interested in the comments from reviewers of all different types of sources, whether it's a library journal, Kirkus, Forward, Publishers Weekly, whatever it is. They're interested in good comments on things like that. But again, as I said, depending on the country, a country like Japan is very interested in the highlights, the chrome and gold versus anything else. But again, the key thing is make it a success here. Yeah, you not many books sell 1 million copies certainly, but if it gets good comments from good people, not just the editors of the publications, but let's say if it's a business book, if you've got some a good review or a good comment from somebody from the American Management Association, or somebody from Bloomberg or something like that, that carries a lot of weight.
Okay, so we don't want our listeners to give up hope that maybe they've only sold, whether it's 1,000 or a few thousand, or they're just starting off. Should they ignore going down foreign rights because it doesn't look like 1 million books will be in their area?
Well, I've represented books that have not even printed any copies, that they're e-books, and they print a few copies on demand. In many cases, some of the books that we have had have sold more copies internationally than they have here in the States. The point that I was trying to illustrate before was how do you get some attention otherwise, and as they said so often, it's how well the book does over here. On the other hand, if the book has good content on a particular subject that's very high, and it's marketed properly on an international basis, through the right sources, whether they're agents or whether they're direct to foreign publishers, one of the key things is does the book fit the needs of whatever the foreign publisher is at that time? The books that we represent, but we get about 95% of them. I think it's 96% actually. We're successful in getting them reviewed at a headquarter level at international publishers. Now, not all those 96% of the books that we represent get offers, and that doesn't mean that they're not good books or that they didn't get reviewed well or that the publishers didn't like them. It just simply meant that those books did not meet what the requirements of the foreign publishers were at that time. Let's say it's a business book and it's dealing with marketing. Well, maybe that particular publisher has had adequate books in their list on marketing, and that they really don't need any more at this time. What they'd really like to have is books that are more directly towards, let's say, advertising or finance or production. Or something like that. So it really depends on how the book is viewed, what their needs are at that time. Just like an American publisher, if a book is submitted to Random House or Simon & Schuster or an independent publisher, does that book fit what their needs are at this time? And that's what the critical thing is. If it is, then it gets reviewed from every every aspect imaginable. The editorial people will review a book from an editorial perspective to see, gee, this is something that our readers will want. The marketing people will be asked, is it something they can market? The production people, is it something that we can produce? The advertising and people will be, is this something that we can advertise effectively? The salespeople will be asked, is this something that we can sell? And ultimately, the financial people will be asked, is this something that we can make a profit on? Just like the American publishers do. So that's the process that goes through at the foreign publishers. Publishing a book, as we all know, is a very expensive process. You can put thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into it. Editing and design and production and cover design and distribution and all those kinds of things. So a foreign publisher is going to make his or her decision very intelligently by reviewing all the factors. So again, if the book is rejected, it's not necessarily rejected on the basis of the content of the book isn't good. It's rejected simply because it's something that they don't need at this time.
Right. So the question, we're coming up to our next break, but the question is, okay, so it doesn't get picked up this year at Frankfurt or fill in the blank, but should the author come back and ask for it to be resubmitted for consideration because maybe there's a new window that would be in their category? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It happens all the time, and I'm glad you brought that up. Did you want to go to break now, or can I continue?
Yeah. No, we're going to come into the break. But the other thing is that when we come back, if you'll add on to it, how long can a book be out before it's considered passe and don't bother? Okay. Because I think that's really important. If you have a 10-year-old book, should I bother to try? Great question. Okay. We'll be right back. Bob Erdmann of Columbine Communications and Publications, and we're talking foreign rights today.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these.
Since 1987, Colorhouse Graphics has set the standard for quality book production. Whether you decide to print a small quantity of books or need a large print run, depend on Colorhouse to help you. You'll receive professional help and advice the moment you reach one of our representatives. If you mention hearing about us on your guide to book publishing, Judith Briles, we will provide you a discount on the first order you place. To speak with a project manager, call us toll-free at 800-454-1916 or visit us at www.colorhousegraphics.com.
This is the TogiNet Radio Network, radio with a cutting edge.
When Ned Thompson and Harry Shore started Thompson Shore in 1972, they believed employees with great character would make up the best company. They were right. They hired people who were not only experts in bookmaking, but who were obsessed with quality and delivering exceptional customer service. Almost 40 years later, Thompson Shore remains a 100% employee-owned company. Ned and Harry knew that successful customer projects are a direct result of empowered employees. We specialize in all books for large and small publishers. Creating beautiful and well-made books, we're dedicated to pleasing our customers by making the experience a good one from start to finish. The personal touch we have with our customers allows us to be innovative in solving their most difficult challenges. Our platform also ensures that we can remain flexible to meet our customers' unique needs and expectations. Our marketing kit can create buzz for your title, enhancing the promotion of your book during infancy. When you need to test the market to gauge your future sales, we can provide digitally printed books that will transition seamlessly into a larger offset run. From ebook to hard copy to delivery, our skillful customer service teams are at the ready to answer your most pressing question. At Thompson Shore, we know that making the highest quality books requires more than just best technologies. It requires superior customer service, professionalism to the trade, and commitment to environmental and social values. With these standards of excellence in place, you can be sure that we will always help you put your best book forward.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. Coming up, you'll hear more about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
All right, so foreign rights on AuthorU, your guide to book publishing, and it's been a while since we've talked about foreign rights, and authors bring it up all the time, and we refer to it sometimes as mailbox money because it's excited when it finally comes in. It's just in, and you don't have to really think too much about it. And a lot of authors are under the misconception that they're going to have to arrange for the translation rights and that, and you need to understand that is not what typically happens. The foreign publisher picks up the book, and that's their responsibility as a publisher. Correct, Bob?
That's absolutely right. The author or the publisher in the U.S. Incurs no expense whatsoever. The foreign publisher pays for everything: the translation, the printing, the production, the cover design, the interior design, everything. And they for that they pay you the compensation in the form of a royalty.
Mm-hmm. And which is always lovely to get, and it comes in fairly efficiently, and eventually you're typically in all these deals, the author will get copies of the book that they probably won't be able to read, but they do get copies. I mean, I actually
it's a lot of fun too. The copies you get, Judith, we were talking about the Saudi Arabian deal that we just did for you. It's so much fun to get that book and see it read from the back to the front.
Exactly.
Everything opposite. It's just kind of fun seeing something like that.
Well, also on that particular book, then the subtitle of that book was "The Confidence Factor: Cosmic Gooses Lay Golden Eggs," and they actually pretty much kept the integrity of the cover. On the book, at least on the first printing I saw, and they had the big golden goose egg on that. And then I had another book you sold, which was my kids' money book to Korea, which actually was a lovely presentation. I couldn't read a word, but I had a friend who read Korean, and he assured me it was my book. So one never knows what you're going to get to see different ways that these books come about. Yeah. Okay, so Bob, when we were coming in, we were talking about the submissions and going through that area. What about and I can't actually I forgot to write a note down where we took that break. Do you remember where we were?
You were talking about what is the shelf life of some of these books?
I was talking about the shelf life. So how old can a book be to be considered to be presented?
We handle simply nonfiction books, and the reason for that is nonfiction books, for the most part, are evergreen. The content doesn't become obsolete, with the exception of something like computer books or travel books and things like that. But I know I'll have to refer to one of the clients that I have, a gentleman in San Diego. His name is Tony Alessandra.
I know Tony.
Yeah, well, we've handled his books for a long time, and I was telling him, gee, Tony, this one particular book, I said, Tony, the copyright on this thing is 1983. The first thing I'm going to be asked when we submit that to publishers is, my God, the thing is, 32 years old or something like that. I said, Bob, the content in that book is the same thing that I talk about when I give presentations in front of government bureaus, the International IRS, General Electric, General Dynamics, all the major corporations. The content remains the same. It hasn't changed that much. You're talking about business management and techniques. So the answer to that question is, as long as the content is fresh and doesn't change, as most nonfiction books are, the book is evergreen. And one of the questions you asked a moment ago is resubmitting books if it has possibly been rejected before. Absolutely. We have books that we represented many years ago in some of our programs that may have been rejected at that time, and all of a sudden a publisher will come back 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years later and say, are the rights to this book in our country still available, because we'd like to make an offer. So again, things change, times change. Again, just like here in the United States, Random House, Simon & Schuster, they have types of books that they're looking for each one of their selling seasons. The same with foreign publishers. They have, needs for books in particular subjects, and that need varies from time to time. So although they might not need a book on management techniques right now, a year from now or 2 years from now, they might well need something like that. They might be changing directions and going into something like that. So yeah, the beauty of a nonfiction book is that it remains evergreen.
Which is important to understand. I mean, that's really important to understand. That so you can have a book out there in perpetuity. And here's the other thing that I don't know about the turnover in foreign countries of personnel, but I do know, certainly in marketing and publicity departments of a lot of the main publishers here in America, there is a rapid turnover. And that a book that might have been rejected for whatever reason this year, you got new players in the next year, and it could be a whole new ball game. But is that possible in a foreign country?
That happens all the time. Generally speaking, they're pretty solid, but just, all countries are pretty much the same. There is turnover for one reason or other. People retire or move on to another position, or there's been a cutback and now they're hiring again. So those things do happen, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I was contacted by a Romanian publisher just a couple days ago, a gentleman that handled the foreign rights for them for many years, and he left the company about 2 or 3 years ago. And I got an email from him a couple of days ago that he has come back and rejoined that company and is anxious to start working with us once again on various titles. He had bought, we represent an author by the name of Randy Gage, and he had bought, I'm going to say, seven or eight of his titles over the past. So he's eager to start working again. So yeah, that happens. Things change. Just like here in the United States, people come and go, different positions, different companies change their priorities, and so it's always worthwhile doing it all over again.
Exactly. So let's talk about money. So what could an author expect if they're expecting with a foreign country?
Well, excuse me a second. That varies a great deal, book by book, country by country, author by author. But just let me give you an example on how the process works. There's a formula that pretty much all of us use to determine what the advance is on a book. And the formula is to find out what their estimated retail price is going to be of the book, what their initial printing is going to be, and what a normal royalty rate would be for a book. So you multiply all those things together, and you'd come up with a reasonable advance would be. Now, again, as I said, country by country, things are quite different. An advance from a country like Indonesia is going to be a lot different than a country from like Japan or Germany. Developing economies are much different than developed economies. So let me just, hypothetically put a scenario together to see how it would work. The scenario that I just described, let's say a publisher in Korea is going to publish your book, and they're going to print 5,000 copies as their initial print run, and the retail price would be $10. So that means that they would have $50,000 in revenue coming in from the sale of the first printing on that book. Typically, royalty percentages will range anywhere from 5 or 6% on up to 9 or maybe 10% in some cases. So let's just take something in the middle and say the initial royalty rate would be 7%. Now, in foreign rights, in most countries, 90% of the countries, the royalty percentage is applied to the retail price, not the wholesale price. That's different than American author contract. American author contracts, the royalty percentage is based on what the net revenue would be after discounting to Barnes & Noble and Ingram and people like that. So in this particular case, they have a revenue of $50,000 coming in, a royalty percentage of 7%. So that would mean that there would be $3,500 in royalties that would be due from that first printing. That would be the typical advance that you would get. Now, again, that will vary country by country and book by book. If you're a first-time author and you've sold 100 copies and that's it, and you're selling it to a country like it'll be substantially less than that for a number of reasons. One is the value of the book isn't as great as a book that had sold a lot of copies. The retail price is going to be quite low because those are developing economies, and they just cannot price their books very highly or they won't sell. And their initial printing is going to be rather low, maybe it's only 1,000 or at most a couple thousand copies. On the other hand, countries like I use Japan as an example quite often. Japan is more aggressive. They usually like to start with a hardcover copy, and they'll print several thousand copies of it, and it'll be priced rather high, and the royalty percentage would be high. So you can expect a much higher advance from a country like Japan or Germany. So that's typically what the formula is that's used in determining advances. Now, it's going to depend, again, you can't look too closely at what the advances are because the key thing is how well does the book sell in that country. Again, I'll use an example. This is, I don't want you to think that all of our clients have this good fortune, but we sold a book a few years ago to a Korean publisher, and it was exactly the same terms and conditions that I just described. Initial printing of 5,000 copies, retail price of $10 and so on. So the initial advance was something like $3,500. Well, the book sold extremely well, and that's an understatement. Now, this author's first royalty check from this Korean publisher was just under $800,000.
Whoa! Did it sell well? That's lovely.
Right? And as I said, I qualify that because I don't want you to think it happens all the time. I just want you to know it does happen, not all the time, but it does happen.
It does. All right.
Bob, the key thing is that it's sold well in Korea. That's the magic thing.
It's sold well. All right, we're going to come right back on our last quarter with you, and we're talking foreign rights with Bob Erdmann. We're going to talk about what countries are really the buyers right now today, and a little bit more to whet your appetite to get into the foreign market. This is Judith Briles. It's AuthorU, your guidebook publishing.
To know but didn't know what to ask with your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these.
The book shepherding concept is simple. The publishing world is changing, and so must you. You need an experienced shepherd and a guide to partner with you as you create, strategize, develop, publish, and achieve your publishing goals. You can't do it alone without paying the price. You can spend your money creating a book that turns out to be so-so, or you can create a book that looks and feels classy, builds your brand, and is a financial success, a bestseller. It's your choice. You choose. You need the book shepherd. Publishing is riddled with obstacles, sometimes nightmares for the author. You don't need problems. You want solutions. Dr. Judith Briles will shepherd you through the maze and the chaos. At times, she's had to step in and rescue a book that has been sabotaged by a publisher or by a publishing service provider or sometimes even the author themselves. Judith Briles is the book shepherd if you want to create a book with no regrets. Give her a call today. 303-885-2207. That's 303-885-2207. Or email her at judith@briles.com. By the way, Briles is spelled B-R-I-L-E-S. Follow Judith on Twitter at My Book Shepherd and on Facebook at The Book Shepherd.
This is the TogiNet Radio Network, radio with a cutting edge.
At Total Printing Systems, customer service is our priority. We are located in Southern Illinois. Our employees have an average of 18 years experience and know that customer relationships are important to our continued success. We have been a short-run book printer for nearly 40 years and always stay at the forefront of technology. Our niche is from 1 to 5,000 copies. Today, we offer digital, black and white, and 4-color high-speed inkjet printing, a cost-effective way to introduce color into your short-run titles. We, of course, offer traditional offset printing as well. Bindery is done in-house, from adhesive case binding to PU AuthorU-Your perfect binding to mechanical binding of all types, including side sewing. We provide warehousing, kitting, distribution, inventory management, a new print-on-demand facility, streaming browser-based ebooks, and bookstore. Call us at 1-800-465-5200 for a quote on your next book project. You can also visit our website at www.tps1.com.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. If you want to write and publish a book, if you want to be successful as an author, your guide to book publishing, everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask, is for you. Stay tuned and you'll hear about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
With me today is Bob Erdmann. He's the president of Columbine Commincations and Publications, and they have been, how many years have you worked in foreign rights, Bob?
I'd hate to admit it, but I started in publishing in 1960. That's 1960. That's a long time ago.
I was a wee lass during then. All right, so one of the things is that people always wonder, how long does a contract last for? I mean, when they buy in the United States, the contracts today, it was interesting how you're referring to the net versus the gross retail price, where the foreign countries do the royalty. That is the way 30 years ago all U.S. countries, all U.S. publishers worked it that way. And then I can't remember the transition to that net amount, but boy, did they save a boatload of money by doing that in the U.S.
Yeah, and that, of course, is one of the major issues with Amazon fighting the big New York publishers over e-books, the pricing on e-books.
Mm-hmm, exactly. So how long does typically do a contract with a foreign country? Is there a lifeline to it, or is it open-ended like most U.S. publishers?
No, the contracts are usually in the area of 3 to 5 years. Sometimes they'll ask for a little bit more, maybe 6 or 7 years, but generally speaking, on average, the contracts are 3 to 5 years. And they're renewable upon mutual consent. And of course, mutual consent meaning are both of us happy with what happened? Have you sold a lot of copies? Have you paid your royalties on time? And so on. So, as with the confidence factor in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was a fun thing. I never expected to get it, so that made my Fourth of July that we have. All right, so Bob, some countries are more active in seeking out books and paying and going after them. Which ones are they?
Well, I hate to say all countries, but most countries around the world are dependent to a great deal on the U.S. for content of books. Now,
that's interesting.
Some countries are more active in going after that than others. As an example, Korea is extremely active and always has been looking for American books. On the other hand, a country like Germany, a large country like that with a solid economy, they would much prefer publishing books on from their own authors, again, just to keep it within their own country. I think Japan is pretty much that way also, although Japan does publish a lot of books that were written by American authors and published by American publishers. So Korea is always very, very active. India is extremely active. The only problem with India is that the money is so
low,
minuscule.
Yeah, low.
And
yeah.
One of the things that we haven't talked about is various countries do charge a withholding tax for income tax, and India holds back 25%, which is extremely high.
Whoa.
Some countries don't withhold any, and others will withhold just a modest amount, and it's another subject, but there is a process to go through to avoid double taxation. But some of the Eastern European countries have gotten very active since the Iron Curtain went down. We do business in Poland and Bulgaria and Czech Republic and Slovakia and Russia, of course, and Estonia and just a lot of them. the problem, of course, with many of those is the economies are not strong, so you can't expect an awful lot of money from them. Although some of the Russian publishers, if your book is selling very well, they'll pay nice royalties and nice advances for them. Latin America, some countries in Latin America, or I should say South America, do quite well. We do a lot of business in Argentina, Brazil, Mexico. We do a surprising amount of business in Mexico. We have several publishers that we do ongoing business with. One of them down there, I think we sold well over 100 titles over the years. So those are the fast-moving. China is also very active. China is, if you have any books on English, the English language, that's an interesting subject to broach the Chinese publishers with, because English as a language is being mandated in China right now, so they're really after a lot of books on the English language. The problem with dealing with China is that it can be very, very complex. And it's part of the culture that things get very confusing over there, I think, and sometimes intentionally so. But the process is slow. When you do enter a contract with a Chinese publisher, it has to be approved by the Chinese government to make sure that there's nothing slanderous in it about the Chinese government in there. And it has to be approved. Issuing a copyright has to be approved by the Chinese government before they can let money go out of the country. So that's a process that adds probably a good 2 to 3 months onto the whole thing.
Well, also, there's different Chinese rights within China.
That's right.
That some people don't realize.
There's, in mainland China, they're called simplified Chinese characters, and that's what you'd be selling there. In Taiwan, it's complex characters. It's Chinese, but they use complex characters. And they're two separate territories, Chinese contract and Chinese complex characters. In Taiwan, their territory is purely Taiwan. On the other hand, Chinese simplified characters, it's simply mainland China. Malaysia and Indonesia are fairly active markets. So Poland is active. We're doing more and more business with Turkey recently. So those are some countries that we're doing some nice things with right now. Russia has always been quite active with us for several years. Problem, of course, is trying to get money out of Russia right now because of their economy.
Yeah. Well, but I'm seeing on this laundry list as I wrote down these names, I said, Bob, I don't know if we pitched to some of these countries, but it looks like we have some more territories we should go for with some of my books.
Well, the thing with foreign rights is, especially with nonfiction titles, is that I think there's something like 30,000 publishers around the world, not counting the U.S., 30,000 foreign publishers. And there's about, 300 or 400 countries. So the market is unending. I mean, we do a pretty good job, but I guarantee you we don't reach all 30,000 publishers in all 300 or 400 countries. We try, we do a real good job, but the market is very broad. So, and that's good. It doesn't stop. We can't say, we've inundated the market. There's no more market left. It just is ongoing. It continues. That's the beauty of foreign rights.
Which makes it so terrific. As you put that together. Well, I always like to ask, as we kind of do a summing up, what do you wish that authors would know that they don't seem to know the questions when they contact someone like you to see if foreign rights is in their midst? Yeah.
The thing is that I always suggest that authors and publishers just don't have knee-jerk reactions to something you heard in some conference someplace that is third-hand information about something. Like I said before about a book being pirated, or we sold it but we never heard from the publisher after that. That's really not. It happens, but it's not 100% of the time. The key thing is, I think, that anybody dealing in foreign rights is you have to be realistic. If you are negotiating with a publisher from Indonesia, don't base your negotiations on something that you heard about someone sold a book to a Japanese publisher and got a $50,000 advance. that's entirely out of the realm of an Indonesian publisher, not out of the realm of a Japanese publisher necessarily. But that Indonesian publisher is not $50,000 is probably more than their entire budget for their whole list for books. So the key thing is be realistic. If you're a first-time author or have a new book or something like that, don't base everything you're doing on as I said, the guy I talked about a moment ago who got $800,000 as his first royalty. That happens, but not all the time. Be realistic. Foreign rights is a fun business to be in. As I said, I've been in the business since 1960, and just really got active. I've always been active in foreign rights, but I just got 100% active into it in, let's say, the mid-'90s. And the reason for that is I just got, I guess, a little burnt out from dealing with the Barnes & Nobles and the Ingrams of the world, and found foreign rights to be very invigorating, great people to deal with around the world, friendships that I never really would have had otherwise. And it's just a fun part of the business, a very enjoyable part of the business. And the key thing to authors and publishers is it doesn't cost anything. It's free. You can market your books internationally, and if when you get offers for it, it's absolutely free. You haven't invested anything except your time.
There you go. And I have one other question for you. If a book has a multi-book award winner, does that make a difference to foreign rights possibilities?
Absolutely.
So when they're pitching it, when they do their descriptions, they need to put in that either what book awards are there, or do they say put multi-book award winner?
Well, I guess if you're doing your own brochures and so on, mm-hmm. I would list exactly what they are. If you're dealing with a catalog, the catalog is dealing with space, and I think you can only say multi. If you have 10 awards, you can only say multi-book awards.
And that's it.
We're there. Space, you're doing your own, use them all.
All right, Bob Erdmann, thank you so much. Foreign rights, contact him at Bob. What's your address?
Bob@BobErdman.com, and that's
and it's a double N. Yeah,
that's right.
Double N. Bob@BobErdman.com. This is AuthorU, your guide to book publishing. We'll be with you next week.
Thank you for being a part of your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. Each week, a variety